So why are we so interested in these fluid compartments? Why is it the physiologists are asking about the fluid compartments of the body? And the reason for that is that the cells themselves require specific factors to be within a very tight range. And these factors are the amount of oxygen, the amount of CO2, the amount of hydrogen ions, the temperature, the amount of glucose which is presented to the cells. So the cells then are requiring this very tightly regulated environment, and yet as you go through your daily life, you are bringing into your body a very diverse amount of material. So you're constantly changing, your environment is constantly changing, and it is the ECF that is the buffer zone. What do I mean about that? Well, just think about it. If you eat a large hamburger for lunch, you're bringing in glucose, fat, proteins, amino acids into the body, and that material will go from the gastrointestinal tract directly into the blood. And then from the blood, it will then be distributed to the cells. So but the organs of the body are trying to maintain that ECF, that buffer zone, which is where all of this material is being delivered within a normal range or within a very set range. And it's the maintenance of this ECF, this constituents of the ECF is relatively constant, which is the main theme of physiology, and this is what homeostasis is about. So that's our central theme, and what we're going to see is that all of the organs of the body are going to act on that ECF to try to keep the contents of the ECF under this very narrow range, which is compatible with the life of the cells. So what happens if we do not maintain the ECF in this very tight range of needed factors? When we have input is equal to the output, we'll have wellness. So under those conditions then, as long as the materials that are within the ECF are within the range of, that's compatible with life of the cells, everything is fine. But when we have input, say for instance, that says effectively is increased over output, then we can get illness or pathophysiology. And the converse can occur if we have output that is greater than input. Then again, we can have illness or pathophysiology. And so it is this balance, this very tight balance that has to be maintained at all times in order to keep the body at a constant activity. If the organ system does not perform its function, then we can end up with input or output which is not equal to the opposite. Under those conditions, then, we will have pathophysiology. So one of the major ways that the body is going to regulate this ECF is by using homeostatic control systems or reflex loops. And that's what's diagrammed here. And the reflex loops have essentially three components. They have a sensor, which is going to detect a specific signal or a stimulus. And that sensor then sends the information to what is called the integration center. And this integration center is usually the brain. The integration center has within it the set points that are compatible with the life of the cells. And so it will then evaluate the incoming signal to see whether or not the incoming signal matches the set point that the body needs or whether it exceeds it or is below it. It then will decide whether or not it needs to make a response and will send out in an effector pathway to the effectors. So this is an efferent pathway going out to the effectors, which will generate a response that will then bring the body back to its normal condition. This is exactly analogous to the temperature control system that you have in your house for heating. So the integration center would be our rheostat, where we set a specific temperature that we want within the room. And then the stimulus is the incoming reading, that is, what is the temperature of the room, and the output would be whether we have to turn on the heat or we have to turn on the air conditioning to bring the temperature of the room back to normal. So this is a simple reflex loop, and it's essentially the types of reflex loops that the body is going to use. So let's consider one of these systems where we have a case where we decided that in a given week that you want to eat nothing but high salt diet. So on Monday, the amount of sodium that's coming into your diet is equal to the amount that's being released from the body in urine. And so we have then what is called a neutral balance. So the mass balance then is equal. What's coming into the body is equal to what's leaving the body. But by Wednesday, with this high-salt diet, you're eating a lot of sodium, you're taking in Chinese food with a lot of soy sauce on it, and so it's really salty. And so on this diet that's very high in salt, we have now a positive balance, where the amount that's coming in from the diet exceeds that which is lost in the urine. And so this now is a positive balance for sodium. But by Friday, now, the amount of sodium that's coming in from the diet is equal to the amount that's lost in the urine. And so we're again under neutral balance. We're under neutral balance, but look what's happened to the body. We've actually increased the amount of sodium, the content of sodium within the body. And I just finished telling you that the body wants to maintain a very tight, regulated amount of sodium within the ECF at all times. That's one of the regulated factors that the body is interested in keeping constant. And yet, we have, with this diet, we have increased the total amount of sodium within the body. So how can we do that? Well, we've increased the total amount of sodium within the body. But what happens when you are eating a high-salt diet? What happens when you take in a lot of salted foods, like potato chips? You eat a bag of potato chips. What happens? You get thirsty. And as you get thirsty, then you drink water. And as you drink water, that fluid will come into the body and dilute the content of the sodium so that it now has a concentration which is the same as the concentration of sodium that we had on Monday. So the concentration of the sodium in the body is going to stay equal. But the content, the amount of sodium that's added to the body has increased. And where did it go? Well, it went to the ECF. All of the sodium went into the ECF. It's not able to cross that plasma membrane, that hydrophobic barrier. And instead, it's staying in the ECF. So where did the volume of water go that you drank? It also goes into the ECF, so that we could dilute then the sodium concentration within the ECF. So all of the volume, all of the fluid volume is into the ECF. So we have increased the sodium content that was in the ECF, and we've increased the water content in the ECF, but we've maintained the concentration of sodium in the ECF as constant. But at what cost? So let's think about it. So what is within the ECF? We said that there's the vasculature and the interstitial fluid space. The vasculature, within the vasculature, we have increased the volume of blood. And by increasing the volume of blood, we have increased the pressure within the vasculature. So by holding this extra sodium and holding this extra fluid within the body, we increase the volume of the blood. And by doing so, we then increase pressure within the cardiovascular system. So there was a cost then to maintaining the ECF at a normal range. So what are our general concepts? So the first is that the human body then is this interdependent set of self-regulating systems whose primary function is to maintain an internal environment compatible with living cells and the tissues. And this is homeostasis, and this is the primary theme of physiology, and it is what all of the organ systems of the body are trying to maintain. The second is that we have stability of these internal variables, and it can be achieved by balancing our inputs and outputs to the body and among the organ systems. But what we need to remember is that there's a hierarchy among the organ systems, and that the two organ systems that always win out is the brain and the heart. And often they will take dominance and allow the body to maintain the brain and the heart, say, for instance, perfusion of the brain and the heart, but then lose the perfusion to other organ systems. So there is then going to be a trade-off where the body is going to make some decisions which may not, under difficult conditions or pathological conditions, which may not maintain everything as a constant. Okay, so the next time we come in then, let's look at all the different mechanisms that we can use to maintain this homeostasis. Okay, see you then.